All right, Todd. So let's jump straight in. Why the motivation code? What's it about and why now?
Well, it's sort of been a long journey for me, but when I came across Motivation Code 4 years ago, it changed my life. And I knew I had to get it into as many hands as possible. And so that began the journey for me. And so for the last 4 years, I've been working on this book in the background, and now is the time to get it out in the world.
Interesting. I'd love to hear, and we're going to dive into that story, kind of how you came across it and what exactly it is in just a second. But for all of you out there watching live on Facebook or maybe watching this as a replay, I'd like to introduce you to Todd Henry. Todd is an author, a speaker, a trainer. He's written a number of phenomenal books, which we'll briefly talk about. I've got all of his previous books right here, and I'll let him briefly explain those here in a bit. But Todd, thank you so much for taking time out of your day, out of your schedule to be with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited. It's great to see you again. We were together in person a number of years ago, and it's really good to see your face again.
Thank you. Same to you. It was back before the world was crazy, when the world was quote unquote normal.
People
Before
could
we
get together in person. Yeah.
exactly before we dive into your new book that's going to be coming out at the beginning of October here, let's just briefly give people an overview of each of your books. So your first book, the one that I was kind of introduced to you through, was The Accidental Creative. So what is this book about?
So the Accidental Creative is for people who have to go to work, who have to make it up, who have to solve problems, who have to be creative under pressure every day. And really, the Accidental Creative was designed to help people understand the practices and systems that they need to put in their life to help them be prolific, brilliant, and healthy all at the same time as a create on demand professional.
It's quite a daunting task that you just outlined there, but a phenomenal book. And your podcast originally, I believe, covered a lot of this. It's kind of where the book may have come from. Is that true?
It did, yeah. The podcast actually began in 2005. So this is my 15th year. We're about to cross 10 million downloads actually this year, which is really exciting. But yeah, so the podcast has been around for a long time. And then the podcast kind of led to the first book. And even though I've written other books since then, we just kind of kept the name The Accidental Creative for the podcast.
You were podcasting before there was even the term podcasting, before it was cool.
That's true. Yeah, there was a big debate. Are we going to call it podcasting or netcasting or web audio, or what are we going to call it? It's kind of this weird thing. And yeah, I mean, in retrospect too, I thought I was getting in late to the podcasting game in 2005. When I started, I was like, oh, I'm so late to this. I don't know. Is there any room left for me in 2005 to do a podcast? So it's kind of fun.
Yeah, how the world has changed. So next book was Die Empty. And what's this one about? Who's it for?
So the first book was about organizing your world to to be able to get your ideas into the world. Die Empty really is about asking the question, are you doing the right work? So great, you're organized, you're putting work into the world, but is it the right work? Are you getting out of you the stuff that's in you that's uniquely yours that could be contributive to the world? Are you building the body of work you're designed to build? And so Die Empty really is about getting your best work into the world before you die, which we all will, right? So don't go to your grave with your best work inside of you, but get it out into the world where it's going to be useful for others. So we talk about some of the common places where people get stuck and how to move beyond that.
Yep. And the next one you wrote was Louder Than Words. And what's this one about and who's it for?
Yeah, so my books all sort of had this natural progression, right? So organize yourself, put the right work into the world. But the third book was about, okay, you put the work into the world, but is anybody listening to it? Because it's easy to put work out. It's much harder to get people to pay attention to the work that you put in the world. So Louder Than Words was really about developing your creative voice, making sure that your work resonates with other people and that it's consistent and representative of what you want to put into the world and who you are.
And then the last book before the one that's about to come out, Herding Tigers. Again, what's this one about and who's this one for?
Yeah. So, I wrote the first three books and I would go out and I would speak at conferences, speak at companies, I was all over the place and people would come up to me and say, hey, Todd, hey, thanks for writing The Accidental Creative. It's really, really changed my life and really helped me tremendously to organize my world, or Die Empty, or Louder Than Words. But let me tell you about my manager, right? Let me tell you why what you tell me to do isn't going to work because of my manager. And so I thought, there really needs to be a book that helps managers understand how to lead creative people, because most people who manage creative people aren't trained to manage. They usually are trained to do some technical skill, like they're a designer or a writer or a marketer or something like that. And they're really good at that. So people say, you know what you should do? You should lead other people who are marketing or writing or designing. The problem is that doesn't come with a manual. And so what I wanted to do was create a book that would help people understand the unique needs of creative people and how to manage them to help them do the best work of their lives. And so that's really what Herding Tigers is all about.
No, and I can say for everyone listening and watching out there, I've read each of these books. They're all excellent. And so highly recommend them, kind of as Todd outlined, based on where you are and what you're hoping to accomplish with the current season you're in. Before we move forward to your new book that's going to be out, one of the things that we promised to everyone out there when we were kind of promoting this and talking about this is that we were going to be giving away 10 copies of your new book to people who watch this. And so for all of you out there watching this, there's two ways that you're going to be entered to win. One is to share this. So if you're watching live now, you can go ahead and share this, start a watch party if you'd like. The other way is to leave a comment, whether that's a question or just a comment about, your interactions with Todd and his work in the past, or anything around these topics that we're talking about. And so tomorrow, what we will do is we will go back through, and for every share, every comment, those will be one entry for your chance to win one of the 10 copies that we're going to give away. So share, and the more you comment, the more likely you are to win. Now, let's jump straight into this new book coming out, I believe, October 6th. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
October 6th. And you said that it was something you came across about 4 years ago. So what is it that you came across? How did you come across it? And what is this thing?
So a friend of mine, Rod Penner, was a 20-year veteran of a management consulting firm, and he had left the management consulting firm years before, and I wasn't really sure what he'd been up to since he left. And out of the blue, I got an email from him that said, "Hey, I want you to take this motivation assessment that a team and I have been working on for the last several years." I'm like, I don't know about you, Wayne, but whenever I hear assessment, I always sort of get this extremely skeptical posture overtakes me, because like, I don't need another set of letters to attach to myself. I always think like, Vanity Fair, which Harry Potter house are you kind of thing, right? Like that's kind of where I immediately, but I was like, okay, I trust Rod. He's got a ton of experience. So I took the motivation code assessment, and quite frankly, I was really surprised at what I discovered. I learned through the assessment why I'd made every major career move I'd ever made, why I'd succeeded in some leadership roles and failed in others, why certain areas of conflict exist in my life with certain people. And I never could figure out why. Well, it's because we were getting our motivational energy in different places, different ways. Frankly, every dynamic I'd always suspected in my life, but never really had words to describe, were laid out before me when I took this motivation code assessment. And so it was only later I realized that Rod and this entire team of PhDs have been working with research that started in the late 1950s, early 1960s, have been conducted over the course of about 50 years, was basically analyzing over 1 million achievement stories from people from all walks of life to come up with the common language they used to describe why those achievements were so meaningful. And that language was distilled down into what is now the motivation code assessment, which helps you understand those unique motivational themes that create gratifying, deeply engaging moments for you in life and in work. And so it changed my life at that moment. And I knew I had to work on this, but the problem was I was already writing another book called Herding Tigers that was coming out in 2018. So I started working on this book in the background about 4 years ago. And then over the course of the last 4 years, started sort of gradually kind of revealing I was working on this to my publisher. And then last year they were like, we want that book. We want to put it out. So that's how we ended up kind of where we are now. And it comes out October 6th. So very excited about it.
That's a fascinating kind of journey. So it was a friend of yours, previous colleague of yours, who mentioned it to you. You took the assessment, and you had me take the assessment. We'll talk about that in just a bit. And when you asked me or said, if you want to take the assessment, you can, and we'll talk about it. I had kind of the same reaction that you had. Great, another assessment. But like you, what it revealed was completely different from what I was expecting. So, I haven't read the book. I've skimmed the PDF version that you sent me, the advanced copy that you sent me. And so didn't really know what to expect when I saw the results from that. And to be honest with you, I was completely shocked and surprised by what was there. It was so revealing because it was like, it makes so much sense. Like you said, it makes sense the way that certain things have played out and the way I've reacted.
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of it is, I think a lot of people spend their entire life trying to find a job that's going to motivate them. And that's a fool's errand. I mean, it's like chasing vapor. You're not going to find a job that's going to perfectly motivate you. But when you understand what motivates you and you learn how to structure the way that you bring yourself to your work every day so that you're operating within your motivational flow, it completely changes the calculus, completely changes the game, instead of waiting for your external circumstances to motivate you.
And that's an excellent point. So who would you say this book is for? Who's it for? And you kind of just answered that, but who is this book for?
I believe that this book is for anybody who wants to have a more deeply fulfilling, engaging life. It's not just about work, although we do focus on work, obviously, in the book, because that's where we spend a third of our life, 8 hours a day, at least, typically for most people. But really, it's for anybody who wants to better understand why they do what they do, why certain moments in their life are deeply gratifying, why they would stay up until 3 a.m, 3 nights in a row to work on something that really doesn't matter to anybody else. But then you try to get them to do something that'll take them 5 minutes and they procrastinate for 3 weeks, right? Well, there's a reason for that. It's because there's something about that work that causes you to stay up till 3 a.m. and work on it. But what is that? It's not the task itself. It's something that you're getting from the task, right? Everything we do is motivated by something. We're pursuing some kind of motivational jolt, some kind of motivational energy in everything we do. Even procrastination. Procrastination is giving us something. If we can unlock what that something is, then we can turn that activity toward more meaningful and productive and engaging means, right? Rather than engaging in activity that may be less productive and less meaningful.
That's great answer. Great answer to that question of who it's for. So I'm going to pull up and share, if it's all right with you, I'm going to share my assessment, the results from my assessment, and get you to kind of, I guess, look through it, analyze it, ask me questions about it. Before I share the screen and pull that up, I just want to say hey to a few people watching. So David's watching. He says, hello, Todd, from your biggest and oldest fan.
Hey, David.
And then we've got Courtney watching. We've got Dirk watching. We've got Jim. Jim was here when you came. And I think David was as well. They were both here at the event when you came and spoke here. So let me go ahead and briefly pull up the screen and share this. Just 1 second here. While I'm pulling this up, Todd, where can people go to find the book, to get the book?
Yeah, so if you go to themotivationcode.com, that's the book page. And we're actually doing something really unusual. If you pre-order and register the book before October 6th, we're actually including the full Motivation Code assessment with the pre-order of the book. So we're going to send you on October 6th when the book launches, we're going to send you instructions for how to take the Motivation Code assessment for free. It's normally $49. So basically for the price of the book, you get the full assessment, a bunch of videos sort of explaining everything, as well as a suite of exercises and other things to help you apply what you learn. So themotivationcode.com is the place to go.
Excellent. So this is the PDF version. Let me zoom out slightly here of my results. So again, for myself personally going in this, I've taken a lot of various assessments as it relates to work and personality profiles, things like that. Again, this one tapped into something that I haven't seen before. What is that? How did it figure out these things?
Well, the thing that's different about the Motivation Code assessment is we start with story. We start with your story, not our agenda. And most assessments, you just jump right into answering questions, right? Mm-hmm. And what we do instead is have you think about deep, meaningful moments in your life where you achieve something that matters to you. It doesn't matter if it matters to somebody else, but it matters to you. And then we ask you a series of questions about those moments, which creates a kind of specificity, because you're thinking about certain specific moments in your life rather than general platitudes or general, sort of like thinking in more generalities about your life. We're asking you specifics about specific moments in your life, which I believe yields more accuracy in terms of response. And I think we've seen that over the course of the number of people who have taken the assessment, is that people say it's eerily accurate, that it's almost spooky. It's like a magic trick is kind of what they describe to us. Yeah.
I would agree with that sentiment and that statement. So, okay, my top one is top motivator: be unique, then make an impact, achieve potential, improve, and then excel.
Right. So what we find is that we call your top 3 to 5 motivations your motivation code. And the reality is that somebody with a number one who has a number one motivation of be unique is going to be motivated differently depending on what that number 2 and number 3 and number 4 motivation might be. So be unique specifically means that you want to distinguish yourself from others. You want to display your talent. You want to show that what you're doing is different from what other people are doing. You probably like being in the spotlight, or at least people noticing the work that you're doing, especially when combined with that number 2, which is make an impact, which means you want to see tangible results from your work. You want to make an impact on the world around you and know that that impact is being made. Some people don't care about that, truthfully. Like some people that we do this assessment for and we do impact sessions with, debrief sessions with, their top motivation is collaborate, and they just want to be part of a team. They just want to be in the flow. Their most engaged, fulfilling moments are just when they're around other people. That's what they want to do. And that's not reflected here. It's certainly not part of my motivation code. I don't understand those people as a card carrying introvert, but they exist, And so, somebody who has that gets their motivational energy in that way is going to have to think differently about the way that they structure their life and their work, the kinds of jobs maybe that they take, perhaps. But the be unique motivation specifically means that you want other people to notice what is unique about you and that you get your energy from that. Now, every motivation is a gift, but there are also what we call some shadow side attributes to that motivation. So we have to be very careful to make sure those shadow side attributes don't overcome us, right? That we don't feed that energy in a negative way. So for example, with somebody motivated to be unique, it could be comparison. You're constantly looking at yourself compared to somebody else and kind of judging how you're doing based upon how you compare to somebody else versus just sort of running your own race. That's one thing that can happen sometimes. I'm not saying in your case, but sometimes one tendency we see is people try to be different for the sake of being different, right? Which isn't always helpful because of that, because they're getting their energy from showing how different they are from other people. They tend to have like really crazy ideas from time to time, that maybe are really out there because they're trying to come up with something that's different from the norm. You think the Apple Think Different campaign, right? Like people who are motivated in this way love that campaign. They do, because that's kind of their life motto is think different. So that would be like be unique. Make an impact means you want to see the tangible results of your work. And that's, by the way, that's one of my top 3 as well. One of the ways this has played out for me in a difficult way is I'm used to being in front of crowds and speaking in front of groups of people, like at conferences, things like that, where I can see people nodding along. I can see the tangible impact of my results of my work, right? I'm not seeing that as much now because so much of my day is spent looking into a camera and I don't get that same kind of feedback from people. And so I've had to find ways of fueling this make an impact motivation because I'm not getting it from that direct, tangible day-to-day activity that I'm engaging in, right? Sometimes make an impact, people also try to make an impact where it's not welcome. So you might go out and start changing things that nobody asked you to change because you need to see the impact of your work on the world, which is something that I struggle with. Like I'll just step in and say, well, let me tell you how to fix that. Well, I didn't ask you to tell me how to fix that, right? It can create conflict. Achieve potential means that you see potential in things and you love squeezing potential out of opportunities. You can see things where maybe other people don't see them. So you might see a business and think that could be huge. You might see an idea, a white space, and think somebody needs to fill that. I see it there. And you're motivated by creating change, by influencing other people, by pursuing the value that's present in an opportunity or a situation. You want to develop things, develop people, develop teams, that kind of thing. So these are some of the kinds of attributes that exist for these people. Now, if I were walking you through this, I would guess based upon what I see here that you probably an entrepreneur, which I think is kind of down the middle. I'm not saying that just because I know you, but I would say like you most likely have gravitated toward an entrepreneurial venture because of the be unique, make an impact, achieve potential, improve and excel. Like that is sort of classic. I want to go out, make my mark on the world, be unique in how I do it, create value, make something that people are going to know me for, right? Like that's kind of a typical mindset of an entrepreneur. And I have a lot of these similar motivations in my sort of the top tier of my 27 motivations as well. So understanding this, right? Wayne, you can look at the world and say, okay, I am motivated to be unique, which is a gift to me. And I also recognize then, okay, there might be moments in my life where I'm trying to differentiate myself just for the sake of it, where it may or may not be beneficial, right? So now I need to think that through when I'm creating something, a product, or when I'm marketing something, or when I'm engaging in a relationship of some sort, right? I need to be thinking through, am I doing this because this is really beneficial to the relationship and beneficial to me, or am I doing this to try to achieve satisfaction of that motivation that is a gift to me and that allows me to do all these things I'm doing and draws me to do these things I'm doing, but at the same time can also be sort of something I have to watch out for because it can also get me into situations where I'm doing things I really don't need to be doing. And so for me, I'll give you one example because I know we're running low on time, but meet the challenge is one of my top motivations. When I'm doing long arc work that doesn't feel imminently challenging, I am easily distractible by other sort of short-term challenging work. I can get very distracted by that work, even if it's something that isn't going to create any kind of value, but I find myself drawn to it because it feels challenging in the moment. Oh, I'm going to crank out a couple of web pages and upload some videos, even though what I really need to be doing is working on the book, but that's not very challenging to me right now. This feels really challenging to me, right? So I find myself drawn to things that are imminently challenging for me, even though they may not be the most valuable use of my time. So I've learned to identify that now and say, okay, how can I make that book work more challenging? Or how can I make this client work more challenging? Can I instill a series of mini challenges in the work to keep me engaged throughout the process so that I won't get distracted by this other work that feels more challenging in the moment? So it's just one way that it's sort of really helped me reframe how I approach my work each day.
That's excellent. I think I owe you for the therapy session here of helping me uncover some of this stuff. But in all seriousness, so I kind of paused it there on that one screen, but it really goes through and details out kind of like you were saying, the shadow side attributes. And it does a phenomenal job. It's really, really well done. And where can people go again? I think you said you are giving this away if they pre-order a copy. Is that right?
Yeah, if you go to themotivationcode.com, you can pre-order and then register your pre-order. We're going to give you ability to take the full assessment, which is what you're seeing here that Wayne went through for free, just for pre-ordering the book. And then normally it's $49, but yeah. So if you pre-order the book and register, you can get the full assessment with that.
Yeah. Again, it's very revealing. And thank you for taking the time to kind of walk through that because like you said, it reveals so many things and so many things in hindsight make sense when I'm able to see what's underlying motivators. And like you said, the things that could trip me up as well. So not trying to do things for the sake of doing things that are unique. As we kind of wrap up, I just want to remind everybody that if you share this post, you share this video, and leave a comment, each of those will be enter you for a chance to win. We're going to give away 10 copies of his book coming out on October the 6th. So again, share this video and leave a comment for us. And Todd, where can people go to find out more about you and all of your other work as well?
Yeah, if people want to go to toddhenry.com, TODDHENRY.com, that's where all of my work, my podcast, everything else can be found.
Excellent. Todd, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.